As parents, there is absolutely nothing we care about more than the safety and happiness of our kids. Navigating their social worlds can be incredibly tough, especially when they're hurting. So, in this explainer, we're going to clarify the actual science behind peer bullying. And we're doing this without any judgment whatsoever because, let's be real, as parents, we're all just trying to do our best. Our goal today is to equip you with the exact tools you need to recognize what's really going on with your child so you can step in and help them effectively. Imagine this. Your child walks through the door, drops their backpack on the floor, and says those four words, "They bullied me today." When you hear that, your heart just drops right into your stomach, doesn't it? You probably feel this immediate, massive surge of fierce, protective, parental fear and anger. You might instantly picture them trapped or physically hurt. Your very first instinct is probably to call the school, text the other parents, or just demand immediate consequences. And that reaction, that just means you're a loving parent. It's completely natural to want to swoop in and save them. But right after that initial shock, we often make what I like to call a well-intended mistake. Out of just deep, deep love for our kids, we tend to judge the severity of the situation based entirely on how dramatic the event sounds, or how many tears are falling, or whether there was physical contact. For example, a child comes home crying because a friend wouldn't share a seat at lunch, and we completely panic. Or on the flip side, a child says, "Oh, it was nothing," while quietly enduring a group excluding them for weeks, and we might totally overlook it. We end up reacting to the visible drama rather than actually looking at the underlying dynamics of what's happening. So to get past those intense initial reactions, we really have to look at the facts. According to the official framework from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, bullying is specifically defined as unwanted aggressive behavior involving a real or perceived power imbalance that is repeated or highly likely to repeat. Now, I want to slow down right here because this introduces our first really big surprise. Scientifically speaking, not every mean act actually counts as bullying. A rude comment or a really tough friendship breakup, yes, it is incredibly painful, but it isn't necessarily bullying. And getting this distinction right absolutely matters because different problems require totally different responses from us. Now, we can translate that somewhat clinical, scientific definition into a highly practical four-step test that you can use in your everyday parenting. First, just ask yourself, is the behavior harmful or aggressive? Second, is it unwanted by your child? Third, is there a power imbalance? And finally, is there a pattern or a strong potential for it to repeat? Now, as parents, we are usually laser focused on those first 2 points. We can easily see the harm, and we definitely know it's unwanted, but we very, very often miss the power imbalance and the pattern. And this is where we hit a major aha moment, because this completely shifts how we view what power actually is. We usually picture, a tall, physically strong kid pushing a much smaller kid. But social power, that is often the real driver. Power can be social influence, like popularity. It can be digital reach. Think about one kid being able to broadcast a nasty rumor to hundreds of classmates instantly. It can be a sheer game of numbers, like 5 kids ganging up against one. Or it can even be access to embarrassing secrets or photos. This invisible power is exactly why simply asking your child, "Well, why didn't you just walk away?" can be dangerously misleading. Because for them, walking away might mean losing their entire friend group or being mocked relentlessly online. The crucial point we need to get straight here is understanding the stark difference between bullying and ordinary conflict. Think about an ordinary peer disagreement. Say, 2 kids with relatively similar social standing arguing over the rules of a recess game. They have equal footing, they can express their positions, and they can negotiate with each other. Now compare that to a coordinated group actively excluding a targeted child. In that dynamic, the targeted child has absolutely no power to stop it, and they feel totally trapped. Telling the kids in that second scenario to just work it out as equals is incredibly harmful because, well, they simply aren't equals in that situation. Or think about how we react to rough and tumble play. Sometimes parents see kids wrestling or kind of aggressively teasing each other, and we immediately panic. But rough play is mutual. The kids are switching roles, they're laughing, and crucially, it stops the absolute second someone asks to stop. Contrast that with a high-risk singular event, like a humiliating photo being posted online. As parents, we might rationalize and think, well, they only posted it once, so it's not a repeated pattern, so it's not technically bullying. But the audience and the permanence of that digital post, that creates a continuing, repeated pattern of harm. The damage is ongoing, even if the act itself was singular. Which brings us to another huge surprise. Visible tears are simply not a measuring tool.
I really want to reassure you here that a child's emotional reaction doesn't prove or disprove whether bullying is actually happening. Listen, some kids will cry intensely over a single, totally normal disagreement with a friend. The distress is very real, but it's not bullying. On the flip side, some kids will hide intense, sustained bullying behind a smile, a joke, or just total silence because they are terrified that if you, the parent, overreact, things will get so much worse for them at school.
And honestly, that perfectly tees up some of the most common mistakes we make. Again, these absolutely come from our loving, protective instincts, but we do need to upgrade our approach. We often search only for physical evidence, assuming that no bruises means no bullying. Or we believe it when the other kid says, "Oh, it was just a joke." Look, if the target isn't laughing, it is not a joke. Sometimes we wait for a full confession of intent, feeling like we literally need to read the other kid's mind, when really we just need to look at the impact of their actions. Or we brush it off as two-sided drama, simply because your child finally snapped and yelled back after weeks of being relentlessly targeted.
So when your child does come to you with an issue, how do we handle that absolutely crucial first conversation? First, try to regulate your own reaction. Take a deep breath, because if you look furious or panicked, they are going to shut right down. Next, listen before investigating. Let them tell the entire story before you start firing off 20 different questions. Then, calmly move to the facts. Ask who, what, and where. Validate their feelings without slapping a big label on the situation right out of the gate. And finally, quietly document the concrete details. Dates, times, screenshots, but do it without turning your kitchen table into a police interrogation room. If you're sitting there wondering exactly what you should say, there's actually a surprisingly simple and perfect script for this. You just say, "What happened matters. We do not have to decide the label this minute. Let's understand the pattern and make sure you are safe." This specific language is incredibly powerful. It completely validates your child's pain, letting them know you take it 100% seriously, but it intentionally slows down your own parental instinct to immediately panic or go to war. It creates a really safe, calm space to gather actual information. And of course, on the flip side, we also need to know what phrases to avoid. Things like, "just ignore it," or "you need to toughen up," "hit back so they learn," or the classic, "I'm calling the other parent right now." We say these things because we fiercely love our kids and we desperately want to fix the problem to make them resilient. But to a child, these phrases can completely minimize their very real experience, put them in more physical danger, or totally strip away their own sense of control over their social life.
So, the big takeaway we've been building towards here is what I like to call the golden rule. Do not use the word bullying as a gate that opens or closes access to help. Because whether your child is dealing with just an ordinary conflict that requires some light coaching, or a single mean act that requires accountability, or sustained severe bullying that requires real school intervention, your goal isn't to win a vocabulary debate. Your goal is simply to name the problem accurately enough so that you can get your child the exact right type of help they need.
Now, I need to mention one major exception here. There are times when you should just toss this entire checklist right out the window immediately. When there are credible threats, severe injuries, sexual violence, extortion, or any signs of self-harm, immediate safety completely trumps terminology. Do not waste a single second debating definitions. If your child mentions self-harm or suicide, take it seriously right that second. In the US, you can call or text the 988 Lifeline or contact emergency services immediately. Safety always, always comes first.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with an empowering challenge: the 7-day experiment. For the next week, if your child mentions a difficult peer experience, I challenge you to completely remove the word bullying from your vocabulary. Instead, ask factual questions. Try saying, "Tell me exactly what happened," or "What made it hard to stop?" Replace your initial panic with a quest for calm, usable information. Notice how much more your child shares when you act as a calm investigator rather than a panicked protector. Just think about it. What if dropping just one single word could completely change how you protect your kid? Give it a try and see how it transforms your conversations.